I'm curious, there must be some applicability or relationships in terms of blowing. I mean, because, correct me, but it seems like New York brass players, there's a different quality to the strength of how you blow. It seems rounder, fuller, and I would almost say more classically oriented, New York compared to Los Angeles. And it's not saying one is better or worse than the other, because I love the horn sections on both coasts, but the LA seems a little more power oriented, and New York seems just a little. Is that a fair generalization?
I think that is a fair generalization. I mean, I'm not one of these New York guys who's going to staunchly support New York, period. But many of my friends in Los Angeles, I think, are some of the greatest brass players. Bill Reichenbach, Chuck Finley, Jerry Hale. The guys are just tremendous. Of course, Wayne, Bob McChesney, Andy Martin. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
But I think there is a difference in the approach, and I haven't heard it put that way, but I think it's a very good way to look at it. And maybe it's just the amount of jazz playing that we end up, even if you're not really primarily a jazz player, you just find yourself in those situations, and there's more emphasis on that kind of thinking. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, it kind of leads into the next couple questions that I have for you. I mean, when I look at your bio, which I did before our interview, and I look at the range of artists and the various styles of music that you've been involved in, it's astounding. I mean, we all know, but just to name a few: Pat Metheny, the Berlin Philharmonic, Steely Dan, Freddie Hubbard, Joni Mitchell, the London Symphony Orchestra, Joe Henderson, the Yellow Jackets.
And just this morning I was looking at my special payments statement, and Cats and Dogs 2, The Revenge of Kitty Galore.
That was a big one. That was my next one on the list, actually. But you beat me to it.
A fine film. Actually, Christopher Lennox did a nice job with that score.
But clearly, you've done everything. I mean, under the sun that you can musically imagine. I just was curious to your thoughts on your approach to these different musical settings and how you have this. It seems like it's an innate ability, but clearly you think about it all the time, of making everything feel so musically comfortable, when I would imagine, even for the great Peter Erskine, it's not always that way in every situation you find yourself. But is there something that, in your approach, that allows you to transfer so easily between these different styles?
Thanks for the compliment. Most of those styles are related to the styles I've grown up listening to, or the music I like.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in the age of not only Art Blakey and bebop, but Beatles and James Brown. So that combined with the sort of classical sensibility that I kind of dived into for a few years makes it enjoyable to straddle or put one foot into one realm or the other. Certain things aren't me.
Mm-hmm.
For example, within the jazz realm, if something sort of Oscar Peterson trio based, I find myself at a loss. I just don't know what to do after a while. I just feel like I just don't really have enough vocabulary. I don't speak this dialect that comfortably. So certain realms of jazz, and then I can get into the funk thing, but my 16th notes tend to be a little more legato, so they tend to swing more than the really great, like, funk drummers. Guys who can really do that pocket thing. So I'm able finally, I think, to admit that I'm really not the drummer for all occasions. But you want to be when you're growing up and you want to do studio work. But I'm fairly happy with the variety of things I get to do. And then I just learned after, I'm on about 600 albums now. And I just got tired of hearing an album when I made what I would term a bad choice musically. So I just learned to kind of weed some of those bad choices out. And a lot of those I think were ego-based, like just wanting to put my stamp on something when it really wasn't necessary. And then getting more comfortable with just getting to the the heart of the music?
You've kind of answered this question, but I just want to ask it in this kind of way. Great drummer in New York named Warren Oates, who's a dear friend of mine, and he's a huge Peter Erskine fan. He said, you know, I really would love to pick Peter's brain about this, so I really feel like asking this. You know, there's certain players that it seems like we just hang on their every note, and you're certainly one of them. Bob Minster's one, Michael Brecker, and thank you, you're too kind. And I'm curious that, you know, we all kind of know what the X factor, that there isn't kind of an X factor. We don't know exactly what it is, but there is an X factor. And I'm curious if there's some sort of, in your mind, an awareness or discipline to follow that we can kind of, for all of us, get to that point where we're really kind of in the moment and reacting and in the flow. Certainly music education has evolved so much from when I was in school and when you were in school, and there's so many more tools that we're given. But in terms of the magic element that you bring, you know, real improvising, real in the moment, reacting and flow, it still seems somewhat elusive. But it sounds like from everything you said today, you get closer and closer. To me, you're there, but it seems like you're getting closer and closer to capturing that every time you play. But is there a thought perhaps behind that?
Jocko used to tell me when I got too much of the head game with it, he said, hey man, he said, stop thinking so much, just concentrate.
Wow.
Which means just listen. So I mean, the short answer, if you listen to the music, it'll tell you everything you're supposed to do. And that's when it seems like you're in the audience hearing it and you're not up there playing. If you're at all self-conscious, then that's when all the gremlins prevent you from being in the moment. And then you combine that with a little bit of passion and a little bit of really caring, and then just a little bit of what, for lack of a better term, I would call showbiz savvy. Just like an actor can summon up an energy and deliver a line with a specific intention to, for all intents and purposes, we would truly believe he's very angry, for example. And the actor could turn right around and say, I'm not angry. But right. They had this, so some of this music, the ear kept on. So after we do the ensemble thing, and then it goes soft and it builds, and then it breaks into the trumpet solo. That's an emotional moment. I mean, there's like a cathartic sort of breakthrough, and you wanna, you know, like just boom, you turn a corner and you threw cold water on the listener's face and you slap him on the ass, and but it's got some sort of dramatic turn, and so. You know, I'm somewhat emotionally involved, but it's also musical technique that I suggest that, hey, we just notched it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, and you can see it as palpable. I mean, everyone goes like, oh, cool.
Yeah, no
question. But if you lose control at that moment, and like, I'm so excited, and then you spoil it. Again, sorry to make all the actor analogies, but
no,
an actor. To make the audience cry, if the actor actually starts crying and starts being miserable, then the audience after a while is like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But the actor who knows how to just evoke that emotional thing, it doesn't mean we're not involved, but we still retain a measure of musical or artistic, just enough distance to. So you're in the moment, yet I think you always have to be aware of, especially drums in a big band, because I've just, you know, I am sort of driving the bus.
No question, yeah.
So when we get to the edge of the Grand Canyon, you know, my job is to let you all enjoy the scenery. I gotta keep my eye on the road, you know, otherwise you're gonna get a little too close to all the excitement.
Well, that's great, and there's a lot of insight there, and I think even towards the beginning of that answer, you said taking the ego out of it, and that to me is a big thing, and you can really hear that in someone's playing. A lot of this is going to be transferable to this question, but I just want to acknowledge, I mean, your body of work as a solo artist is as prolific as it is exceptional, and we all know the virtuosity you bring to the drums, but you're a brilliant composer as well. Can you kind of just talk a little bit about some of your solo projects and how maybe you approach things as a composer and as a producer?
Yes. Most everything's in the key of C. So I would take the word brilliant. I just, I like melody. Despite that I'm a drummer or whatever. I like tuneful things, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of a simple song. Mm. And I wish I was more sophisticated. Here's my advice. If you're in school, study counterpoint and learn how to play the piano and to be able to read bass clef, treble clef, learn orchestration, learn how to do transposing, all these things, learn chord voicings. But if I could go back in time, I would study counterpoint. Mm-hmm. I think that's the secret to all great writing. And Mincer knows it, Vince Mendoza knows it. Sure. And you can just listen to their stuff all day. And I read a great description about counterpoint. And it was in one of the books about it, and it said, if you're trying to explain counterpoint, people don't even know it, but it's that element in the music, like when you go to a Broadway show, when all of a sudden your hair stands up or you start feeling an emotion. Mm-hmm. And I caught it when my wife and I were at Disneyland, and we stayed to watch the fireworks and the Tinkerbell and the whole thing. And that's on cue, the pre-recorded soundtrack. They start playing When You Wish Upon a Star. Then of course they had the French horns doing their soaring little counterpoint, and I got the little goosebump reaction. And I went, yeah, it's counterpoint. That's what's making this such a special moment for these thousands of people, and most of them wouldn't have noticed it. Right. Yeah. Right. So, in a way, bringing it back to the drums, away from composing, because I feel it's very modest work compared to drumming. But it's all counterpoint when I'm doing it. Basically, like the example I was talking about with the setups. I mean, so it's rhythmic and tonal and textural counterpoint, and so maybe I'm making up for the fact that I didn't get to study it, and I don't really know the rules of writing counterpoint, but intuitively I get it, drumming wise. Certainly,
yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Your company, Fuzzy Music, it's been a personal inspiration for me, and I love it. Everybody should go to fuzzymusic.com and check it out. It's just fantastic. To me, we're talking a lot about Bob Mincer because we're here with Bob, but you and Bob...
That's FUZZYMUSIC.com.
Go there as soon as actually I'd pause the interview and go there right now. But
we'll be waiting.
You and
we'll wait. Go ahead. Wait.
Okay, we're back. You and Bob Mincer, to me, are and there are others, but you guys are friends, and I'm inspired to get to work with you. You guys are the prototypical consummate musicians for the 21st century to me.
But Hip-Bone is a much better name
well,
than Fuzzy Music. I have to compliment you.
Well, thank you. I'll take that. But in short, you're involved in every aspect of the music, from playing, performing, writing, arranging, education, production, and entrepreneurship as well. Can you just maybe share what is and what was your vision for starting Fuzzy Music, and also kind of maybe just briefly touch on how that could relate to a young person trying to build a career in this ever-changing music business of ours?
This one I can give a relatively short answer. Bob Beals was a gentleman, inventor, tinkerer, music industry figurehead for many years. He ran Evans Drumheads, which was eventually bought by the D'Addario family. They make the world's greatest guitar strings, and now they make the world's greatest drumheads, which I thought were the world's greatest back when Bob was making them in this very small factory in Dodge City, Kansas. Anyway, neat old guy, and I was doing a gig in Wichita, and he drove over to see me. He wanted to show me some new heads he was working on, and I think Lucy and I just had our daughter Maya, and I was running around a lot, and Bob just kind of chuckled and said, "Peter," he said, "you need to learn how to earn money while you sleep."
Mm.
And I thought, wow, no one had ever said that. So we started just looking at, well, how can you do that? Well, in music, certainly royalty bearing items, and maybe that would be in the form of songwriting or in making recordings, and in making recordings where you, I mean, nowadays everyone has their own record label, but at the time, you know, you had to respectfully go ask some guy in a suit, please, this is the vision I have for my music, I would like to make this recording, and then whether he said yes or whether he said no, you know, there would hinge your musical plans and destiny, and we just thought, well, let's just do it ourselves. Who needs these guys? So even though we didn't have the promotional and distribution strength of these companies, we had the strength of the satisfaction that we did it when and how we wanted.
Yeah.
And you know, like the old MasterCard, that's priceless. You can't buy that. Freedom is priceless. So you have to wear a lot of different hats nowadays. I've just introduced, 3 days ago, introduced a new app.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's called the Erskine Joy Luck Play Along app. You know, I have great ideas. I think I come up with the worst names for things.
Au contraire, I thought that's a great name.
Joy Luck, of course, gets its inspiration from Amy Tan's novel Joy Luck Club. And it's the name of an album, the most recent album I did on my label Fuzzy Music, with the group I call my new trio. Vardan Ovsepian on piano, very talented, Berkeley trained keyboard player, and my nephew, Damien Erskine, who plays electric bass. And this was the first recording I had done in quite some time that had separate isolated audio tracks for piano, bass, and the drums. Okay. Normally we just do it all in one room.
Sure, yeah.
So I thought, oh, it'd be cool to do a play along, and I was going to approach it in the traditional sense. Well, let me see. We'll put out a book. We'll put out a CD. Maybe it should be a DVD, because I'd like it to be music minus drums, but also music minus bass, music minus piano. We could do 3 books. No, not 3 books. And all of a sudden I thought, you know, apps are the new paradigm.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm no genius to recognize that, but it seems like this is the first app that fills this play-along niche, because, you know, now if you want to do play-along or music minus one, you can either buy an album for $9.99, basically $10, for music minus one instrument, or you can buy 1 track at a time, 99 cents or $1, music minus whatever. So instead, we put an entire album's worth of music into the app, and I created mixed stems of all the songs minus drums, all the songs minus bass, all the songs minus keyboard. Lead sheets from the sessions, full transcriptions of everything, solos, playing, drum beats, textual analysis. Within the app you can print or email all this music. This iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, photos from the session, this kind of stuff. But also, instead of, with most play-alongs, you know, they put the click on one side and the music on another. This is full stereo, and then you can control the volume of the click.
Wow.
By slider, and then you could also, I think you, I don't know if we've figured out, it's very easy to control the click on off, and you can just have count in only. You don't need click to play this stuff. So, you know, students can use it not only for practice, but they can use it for recitals, juries, public performance. And we're thinking of making a contest in cooperation with Vic Firth, and just a discussion with them now. The play along app, you know, people submit, post their entries on like YouTube.
Sure.
So,
wow,
you know, you can involve musicians from all over the. And by the way, we've also done music minus with the solos on this. So, play the trombone, you want to play along with us, you can. But now that we have this technology in place, we're thinking we're going to do like standard forms. I'm going to do one of just drums for horn players to practice with, if they just want to practice different tempos with drums, different kind of tunes. An Afro-Cuban one. So this could be the start of something good. And fuzzy music, we may still do some recordings, but I think the app paradigm again, if we do recordings, we may release them through the App Store. Just because I think it's more interesting what you can do with apps. Because the cool thing with the App Store, this is why I like it, you can fix and upgrade your product and it automatically reaches every customer who's bought it. So imagine, like, you put out an album and then you realize there's something you wanted to change about it. You can't ask people to go buy the album again, but everyone would just get that improved version if you wanted to get it to them, and all they would have to do the next time they hook up their device, there it is for them. So it's a very cool
that's
opportunity.
Incredibly cool. You seem to be at the front edge of that too. So.
The other thing, would you mind to hand me my iPad? Lovely assistant again.
Yeah.
So this is the next thing I'm working on. It's kind of an autobiography and chronicle of you know, my years of weather report. It kind of goes back and forth.
What a great photo.
Nice.
Where was it?
That was at Haneda Airport. It's just a few days more than exactly 34 years ago.
Wow, that is fantastic.
I'm the square looking guy. So that's been a process of 2 years working on this book, and I just thought I'll also show you the app.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
There's the app, and so we can take a tune. Let's see, and we'll if someone wanted to listen to the album performance, they could. And if they wanted to look at the full score while they were listening, it's all there.
What a great tool. Boy.
And then if you wanted to, you could go minus drums and have click. Change the volume of the click. So
awesome.
The technology, you know, as much as it's worked against the song, you know, people have incredible album collections and they've bought maybe 15 CDs their entire life. This new generation of people just don't know what it is to buy albums. Okay, well, you can either bang your head against the wall all afternoon until that makes you feel better, and it won't. Or just, all right, so how can we use the technology? How can you leverage it or spin it so you won't go nuts? And so it's just learning to speak that language, I think.
Yeah, that's inspiring. I mean, it's It's a great lesson. I mean, you're so proactive in addition to all the great musicianship. I'm inspired by the fact that you're forging ahead in such a great way. So.
The world needs trombone apps. This is what I'm waiting for.
Well, for right now, they'll have to check out the Erskine Joy Luck play along.
Let's do a trombone app.
Good stuff. Peter, just a couple more questions, and this gets back to kind of the drum thing, and I was interested in this one. If you were to pick, say, 5 to 10 drummers who've had the biggest influence on your playing, could you maybe share who those might be?
Well, I'll do it in order of, as soon as you ask the question. Mel Lewis came to mind first. And I'm thinking of Mel when he was still on the West Coast, doing those recordings with like Marty Page.
Sure, yeah.
And then when he went to New York. It's just quintessentially great drummer.
Mm-hmm.
He never made a bad choice that I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
It just always seemed to be musically right. Elvin, stylistically, and just for that incredible sense of danger.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the drummers I like listening to are names that aren't. I mean, you know, because you always have your Tony Williams, your Jack DeJohnette, your Buddy Rich.
Mm-hmm.
You leave anyone off that list, it's a sin. Philly Joe Jones, Art Blakey, Roy Haynes. There's so many great drummers, but I really liked listening to a lot of the guys, especially the New York drummers, drummers like Don Lemond, Ozzie Johnson, of course Bernard Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Lavorgna.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these. I mean, you may have run into Bill when
yeah,
he was Liza
Bill. Yeah, sure.
But before he did that, he was a tremendous studio drummer.
Right.
And it's just by luck or accident, I grew up listening to a lot of these guys on albums, and I was just fascinated by not only what I heard on that record, but because I got enough albums. My dad was so cool about letting me buy records. The either consistency I would notice or how they were changing. And especially the way the music was in the 60s, there was just so much going on that every record was sort of like, what's going to happen now? You know, you were really curious just to hear how these guys were growing. And they were young too, a lot of them just like in their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelly Manne was a huge influence. Nick Ceroli was a big influence. I think Blakey was one of the bigger. Louis Hayes, I was crazy about him. So I've gone probably over 10 already.
That's
Grady
great.
Tate,
Yeah.
phenomenal drummer. Mickey Roker. And then the guys today, I mean, Ed Soph, John Riley, Billy Stewart, Keith Carlock, Louis Nash, John Hollenbeck. I mean, I'm going to leave out names again, but there's so many good players.
Yeah, it kind of one consistent thread through this interview is like you are a very open person and you're taking in from everybody and giving out to everybody. It's amazing. I think we can all learn a lot from just hearing you answer that one question. To be honest with you.
Hollenbeck is really impressive. That guy can write, and the Brookmeyer influence thing, which I've admired more than been part of. I mean, I was a big fan of his playing always, and his writing I'm not as familiar with as I wish I was. But that's because I'm on the West Coast, and we have to boast about our scene here. I'll sometimes take exception to some of the New York exceptionalism.
Right.
I've gotten a little bored with some of the stuff I'm hearing out of New York, and only to say that I kind of like and have always liked West Coast jazz, and it's, we don't. Okay, so the Hawaiian shirts have a little bit of a negative impact in terms of hip, but
I don't have a problem with them. But,
well, not everybody wears them when they play. I don't wear them to recording sessions. I did once, and I thought that was jive. So.
Well, I grew up in San Jose, so I'm always going to have a soft spot for all things
Good.
California. But Peter, just one last question, and it can be, you can take it however you'd like, but in your vast career and all the things you've done, if you were to just give one piece of advice to a young musician, old musician, anybody in between, what would that, what might that be?
Have fun. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, and I think the older I get, that's be in the moment and enjoy the moment. You know, I certainly have this week playing with you, that's for sure. Peter, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and thanks for you know, just years and years of great playing and great music, and really appreciate you stopping by today. And don't forget fuzzymusic.com and the Erskine Joy Luck play along. Great stuff coming from Mr. Erskine. So we will see you all next time on Bone2Pick.